Okay, welcome everyone to the January 30th meeting of the Short-Term Rental Task Force. And we'll begin as usual with introductions from the task force, starting with you, Bob, please.
Bob Goodrow, Gunpoint Road.
Thank you.
Nellie Clifford, Harpswell Neck.
Jane Covey, Select Board.
Bethany McNelly Davis, Bailey Island, Maine.
Bruce Davis, Oars Island, Maine.
Howard Levitan, Oars Island.
Sherry Blackstone, Cundy's Harbor.
Mark Scantis, Harpswell Neck.
Okay, and we're expecting Jennifer, I think, this evening. Peter let us know that he will not be able to be here, that he's traveling this week, but he has sent in some information ahead of time. Could we have a adoption of the agenda? Is there any one change has been suggested? If we have time, under other business, that there be a brief report from those who attended the Grow Smart webinar. And I want to talk a bit about the assessment paper that was sent out to you. There's needs to be some corrections to that, so I'll talk about that at the end. Any other suggestions for change in the agenda? Okay, if not, could we have a motion to adopt?
I make a motion to accept January 30th agenda with the, under other business, if time allots, the Grow Smart webinar overview.
Okay, and comment on the assessment.
Second that.
All right, all in favor? Okay, I think that's unanimous. Let's go forward then. The annual town, the minutes, approval of the minutes would be next.
Draft.
Does anyone have any comments on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the January 9th meeting minutes.
Is there a second? Seconded. Nellie, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. I put first on the agenda the draft of our report to the town annual report. We had a small extension to bring us to today's meeting, so if we could have any comments on that, any suggestions, any edits, we'll move forward. We need to make a decision about it tonight so it can be submitted. Yes, Howard.
There's a minor typo on the third line after the word rental.
Oh, Sin, Harpswell? That's.
You don't want to bring sin to the town meeting.
I'm sorry, third line on the first paragraph?
Yeah.
Rentals in Harpswell?
The break is in the wrong place.
Yes, got it. Okay, we'll fix that. Anything else? See, people are taking a look still, so we'll give time for full review.
Do you need a motion on this?
Yeah, well, Bethany is taking a quick look, so let me give a few more minutes for that. It looks like Mark may be looking at it as well, and Sherry.
Looks good to me.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at it enough? Could we have a motion then? Yes. Oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Howard.
Motion to approve the STR task force report.
Thank you. Second from
Second.
Howard. Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you all. That will go to Christie in the morning. Okay, getting into the business of the evening, just want to make a couple of comments. We have some substantive work to talk about. We have up front a continuing conversation that we began last meeting about how the task force will respond to public comment and public input. I want to say we went till about 7:40 at our last meeting, and I would like, with respect and in respect to the volunteers who are on this task force, to stop at 7 o'clock. So we will try to get through the business as expeditiously as we can, and leave at least 15 minutes at the end of the meeting. 6:45 would be the goal for public comment. We have a lot of public here, a lot of people that are regularly attending our meetings, and so we hope that we'll be able to give the floor to people who have perhaps not spoken before, and limit our comments as much as possible so that everyone who wants to speak can hopefully do so within that time period. Good evening, Jennifer. We're just getting started. In item number 5 on the agenda, task force response to public input, I just want to make a couple of comments about what's happened since our last meeting on the 9th. As task force, remember, we talked about and accepted it in principle as a goal to adapt our meeting schedule to work through this year into the fall, with the goal of bringing our recommendations and report to the select board in October. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. So that is taking more time, respecting the fact of the summer that many people on the task force are very busy during the summer, and we will potentially, if we can, not have meetings in a couple of months of the summer so that people have an opportunity to do their work and move it forward. And we will obviously, as time goes on and as we move and as we deliberate, we may have to change that, but that's the goal now, to have monthly meetings and to finish in October. Importantly, we discussed amending the scope of the task force work and voted to recommend the amendment to include education, considering education and or regulation in our mandate. I took that to the select board on the 11th, and they adopted it with no discussion, accepted that. So that is now official, and it's up on the website. There was a request for legal consultation. Christy reached out to the legal folks at the Maine Municipal Association, who made a comment that is in the packet for the task force. I asked Mark, our planner, Mark Ironman, to please put that into more plain English so we might understand it a little better, and so that has also been done. And we can come back to that later in the meeting. We also agreed that property managers would get together and provide some data. And I don't know, Bethany, is that this? Or is that
Yes.
something?
Yeah.
That's this. Okay, thank you very much. So that's on the agenda as well. And we also agreed that we would be discussing processes that the task force would like to put into place, agreements that we make among ourselves and with the public as to how we proceed with input from the public. So that's what I perceive having happened since our last meeting. Is there anything else that others would like to task force to comment on? No? Okay. So let's, if we can then, open up the discussion to your thoughts about how we proceed and how we respond to public input. It comes both from people that attend the meetings, it comes from the emails that we receive, in between meetings, which we review at each meeting. So if anybody has thoughts on that, please share them. Howard, yeah.
I'll wade in. I'd like to just wade in on the emails. I think that every email that we receive should be responded with a thank you for taking the time to write to us, and that they will be provided to the task force, and the task force, they should watch the meetings, because this is the place to respond to them. There isn't any one individual here that speaks for the task force. And so the task force is the one that has to respond to whatever inquiries from the public that we get. So we need to talk about it and come up with a response if it's necessary, or add it to our work list, or see if we can get them an answer. But they should get a response. That would be polite, I think.
They should absolutely get a response, and they should get answers. We've had the same questions asked just about every meeting, and I've not heard answers to them. We need to figure out a way to take and compile, look at all our emails. I'm sure that there's multiple of the same type of questions that we can just try to put a few minutes aside each meeting and address some of those questions or concerns. If
Okay.
they're taking the time to write us and taking the time out of their days to be at the meetings, I mean, they deserve answers. Some of their questions I have too.
And I think that is aligned with what I heard Howard just say, that we bring them into the discussion of the task force in terms of responses. Okay. Let's just get the thoughts out, and then we can have a full discussion. Anybody else?
Would it be reasonable to give a few minutes at the beginning of each meeting before we get into the task force agenda to the public, to have like a specific pointed question, or not pointed, but a specific question that we can respond directly to and have an open dialogue about, and not just listen and absorb? But to put a time limit on it, just so we can still attend to the agenda at hand.
We might be able to address some of the questions that come up at the beginning during the meeting versus having people speak at the end of the meeting. We adjourn in our hurry, and those questions aren't addressed during that meeting, and
Okay.
that might be a good idea.
Some questions may have an immediate answer, some questions may not. But if what you're suggesting is that we have public comment, that you can't hear me? All right, can you hear me? Maybe my microphone isn't working.
Is the light on?
No, it's not. I don't think it's working. It's not working. Sorry about that. It's a bit of an issue.
We handled that pretty good.
This one I think is working. Yeah. Okay.
Great work, thank you.
Okay, let's not stop there, but see what other thoughts people have. And come back to that, yeah.
I believe we need to answer questions, but I'm afraid that they could be all too consuming and we never get anything accomplished too. I mean, I don't know if there's okay. I agree that there's some questions we don't have answers for as yet. There are things that I don't know that I can't answer, and I'm just afraid that, what do we probably have, over 30 emails or better right now?
Oh, more altogether. We have more. We have
I mean,
If
it-
we had
13
been
this week,
answering
yeah.
them as they
Hundreds
came
now.
in, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be
Well,
fine.
we can't undo where we have been. We're talking about how we go forward, if we can, okay? So I think that the question is, how, if the public would like to bring things to this meeting, how do we get that input in time so we can determine how to put it within the agenda of the meeting? So that we give time to it, but we also have an opportunity to continue to work on the work of the task force that we are bringing. If we're going to get the task done, we need to move month by month forward. So one way would be to have those who would like to have issues or questions addressed at the meeting to submit them ahead of time so that they can be adapted and put into the agenda. The other is to say the public comment is input for our deliberation, and our obligation is not to answer necessarily directly every question, to take it into our deliberation and to work with it, and in our process, process that comment from all that comes in. So I think we need to think about how we handle input into the meeting up front. Not against doing that, but how do we do it in a manageable way? And how do we retain the responsibility of working in these meetings, which are where we deliberate as a total task force, so that we work on our work and move it forward. I don't know if I'm being clear. Howard, you're looking a little
No,
puzzled.
I'm puzzled only because normally in public comment is just what it is public comment. And we as the task force members are supposed to listen and not respond. I don't think you see anything different at any of the committee meetings here. To the extent that somebody knows the answer, they still don't, I may know the answer to the question, but I don't speak for the task force. We would have to discuss it and say, for example, we have taken positions on, I think we had a long discussion about the question of whether short-term rentals impact affordable housing. And the answer we came up with was, we don't see that here. Number one, because these are shoreland homes and very expensive. And number two, because it doesn't seem to have a relationship, and no one's proved that. We took a position on that. If somebody asked that question, we can respond to that. Anybody on the task force could say, we took a position on that, here's what it is. But if someone asked somebody asked the question about, for example, the legal status, I could answer the question, but I'm not the town's lawyer. And so we took that into consideration last week. And we were able to get a response to that, which is in everybody's packet today. And I think that's the right process, is that if someone has an important question from the public or from the task force, we'll try and get the answer to it. And we'll just state that we'll try and get an answer. And it may take longer than one meeting to get that answer. But rather than try to respond off the cuff and not have a good position on it, I don't think that's appropriate as a committee. And it isn't the way the committees in Harpswell do business.
This
The
is true.
questions that have been asked over and over and over, we should have an answer by now.
I think we're talking about two things: what has been public comment, and what we do going forward. So, Bruce, let's hear from you.
Howard, we had the question about where do we stand with town legal, and that question came up every single meeting for 3 meetings, and it never got answered. And it basically took a Mexican standoff in the 3rd meeting to get an answer to the question, which was, we haven't approached the town attorney, and the town attorney didn't know anything about what was going on. Every single meeting, as far as I know, we've had the question phrased more or less differently but why are we here? How did we get here? And I still don't feel like we've got an adequate answer to that question.
I agree.
So, I mean, if you read the public comments and these things, there's a lot of distrust in the community about what's going on here. And I
It's
think a lot of it stems from the fact that we get these public comments, and then we adjourn, and we come back, and they're never addressed until it gets heated like it got last meeting. So I don't necessarily think or know that Jennifer's suggestion is going to be better than what happened last meeting, but I do think the community's entitled to get straight answers and answers that are prompt. I mean, we literally went 6 weeks from the first time we were asked a question about legal until we got an answer, and the answer was simple. We haven't talked to the town attorney. And we never got that answer, and it was asked numerous times. So,
Okay.
there are gonna be questions that come up that we're not gonna be able to answer. But there could be some questions. Jane knew that we hadn't put the question in front of town legal, and I have no idea why we couldn't get that answer, but I do think it contributes to the lack of trust that the town has in what's going on with us. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Anyone else?
Just a thought about if we were to take public questions at the beginning of a meeting, I think it'd be ideal to be mindful of a time limit so that we can be structured in that, if that's the course we go. But also, to really make it a single question, quick discussion, or write it down for an answer for next time, and just be mindful of what we do with the question, and not just let it go. Like what you were saying, Bruce. What I find hard to do with the public comment is it's a comment, and we're just absorbing it, and we're not discussing it. So there's no open dialogue there. So I think if we were to give the community an opportunity for each person to ask a single question that's direct, that we can answer, or say we'll look into it more, it'd be a more fluid back and forth for the task force to work on. I do think it's okay to say we don't have an answer and we'll work on that. Or we might find that answer during a different process.
Or it might bring to light that maybe it's a good idea to get it in front of legal and see if there's an opinion. Or address the fact that we may be going a little too quickly for the task force to reassess based on comments, the direction we're going and some of the answers we're looking for.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple things, and I want to reflect on this and have the task force reflect back. One is, I totally hear what you're saying, Bruce, about distrust. Totally hear that people are feeling frustrated, that they raise things and they're not getting responded to in the way that they would hope to be responded to, and that it has taken you 3 times for you to raise it. So we are now there, and my apologies for not being responsive more quickly. My answer was one that you did not accept, so you came back. I said, we go to the legal when when we're at the end of the process and we have an ordinance. That's how the town has done that. You came back, and we said it again. So we've gone 3 times with an answer that didn't satisfy, so you came back and you made your point, and we did a request through Christie to MMA, so we have that opinion. And I hope that has resolved it.
Yes, I think.
Okay,
I think
all right.
But
So-
we had the answer on day 1, which I did not get. And
The
that
answer?
was that we hadn't been to legal. We had,
I thought that was clear, but nevertheless, we had not been to legal. Okay. So with our history, what I would ask the task force at this point, everyone has heard the comments, everyone has had access to the written comments as well. What do you feel is outstanding that needs to be addressed tonight? Or needs to be addressed, and then we'll work on when it gets addressed and how it gets addressed. Could we have that from the task force, please?
One is, what was the driving force behind forming this group? What was the catalyst? Where did this begin? Who, why, when?
All right?
Heard that
Okay.
many times. And I
Okay.
think we need I would like an answer too. I don't know.
Let's get them all on the table. Any others? Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think the task force was formed because the people here wanted to get together. My understanding is this was a directive from the select board of the town. So I don't know what the select board was thinking about or what happened to bring this question up to form the task force. So obviously something happened in their eyes or in their situation, whatever that was, I don't know. And then we were charged. And then,
Or
this is
somebody
how we
went
got
to them,
together.
something.
Okay, we'll continue with that. I'd like to see if there are other outstanding comments or questions or concerns that the task force would like to address and put on our agenda for going forward either tonight or in the future.
I think that part of what that I've seen or run into is a clear understanding as to who this who is affected by this, but we don't know what this is yet. So I mean, there's a lot of, how do I say this? A lot of the unknowns are stuff that we don't know as well, which is part of what I feel like where that there's a break in feelings, like we're being asked questions that we don't have the answers to. Why don't we have those answers? Well, we haven't gotten there yet. And giving, us a better, giving the public a better understanding of the steps to the process might help with why those answers aren't there. Does that make sense?
Yes. It does to me. I don't know if it makes sense to other people. What's the path forward? And what are the tasks that we're doing and how are we working together? Okay? That's fair. Anything else?
I'm wondering where the survey fits in and where we're going. Am
Okay.
I putting the cart ahead of the horse here? I guess that's,
Okay, we're
how
gonna,
much weight are we giving this survey?
that's on the agenda for tonight,
Right.
so we'll address that tonight. Okay. All right. Three things. One's on the agenda already. Let me respond to the driving force. There are several threads of input that the town, the select board have received, informally, more than formally. I being one of them, in conversation, people who had concerns about short-term rentals in their neighborhood. You know very well that the codes office had concerns about the septic. The folks on the comp plan have dealt extensively with concerns that are in the community about well water and the use of water and what the future for that is going to look like. I put that all together and brought it to the select board for discussion. There was very little discussion at the Select Board, but what came out of that was the acceptance of the proposal that we form the task force with the mandate that it had. So if you want to put it with an individual, I'm the one who brought this forward to the Select Board as a concern in the community that was unformed but existed.
So do we get to see any of that? Any of the comments, any?
There's a report to the select board.
It was verbal. No, there's nothing written. There's nothing in a document that I'm aware of about any of that. It is,
So then where did it come from if there's nothing written? Phone calls?
Well,
conversations, and it wasn't just one select board member who's had these conversations and interactions with people in the community. The others have also been made aware that there are some concerns from some folks. Yes, sir.
But this has also been discussed at many of the committees, not only Comp
housing,
Plan Committee,
yeah.
many times.
Yes.
Planning Board has talked about this, Affordable Housing has talked about this.
We know that.
This has been a widespread discussion in the community. It just hasn't gotten a lot of attention because not a lot of people watch those meetings, unfortunately. But the discussion has been ongoing, at least for the last year, about the issue of short-term rentals. What we all thought at the outset was that it had a real impact on the prices of houses and the lack of affordable houses was being caused by this. And I think we've debunked that. And I think that short-term rental people have debunked that.
The housing,
So-
yeah.
The
I mean-
affordable people.
Yeah.
so I would tell you that short-term rentals was an avid discussion within the Affordable Housing Committee group. And I would say that there was more questions than answers. We didn't have answers. I will tell you, I think I've gathered more answers being part of this committee, even though we don't even have answers yet with this committee, than we had with the affordable. But it had an impact on where we're losing long-term rentals, and is that impacting, the short-term rentals impacting attainable housing? And we may not be able to say that was as of last year or if it was 15 years ago. We just didn't know, and so it was a discussable item, and we were obtaining tons of information from other towns on what they had been working through on the same issues to review it. And it got to the point that it was discussable. Kevin Johnson is part of that committee, another board member, so I'm not thinking that Jane's out there on left field assuming anything, but he was hearing all this as well, and then we got told it's being dropped from your committee. We dropped it. But it was a discussable item, and I will tell you, I think we're all learning more about it in this committee. And I don't, if we're learning something, that's maybe not a bad thing.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I do think that, when I asked the question, the first time I asked Bob, you responded that Affordable Housing Task Force was the driver. They were in total disagreement with my statement that I didn't know why we were here. You said they felt like that this was the wrong way and that there are processes that need to be rectified. And you said that it's on our agenda in a big way. That same meeting, you said, affordable housing has nothing to say about it. We left it off the board. Affordable housing is not on our agenda anymore.
No,
I feel like there's a small group of people, the survey certainly spells that out. There's a small group of people who have an agenda or want to steer this in a certain way. Affordable housing, short-term rentals do have an impact on affordable housing, but they don't have an impact on affordable housing in a resort or a vacation community like Harpswell. If you go to Brunswick, there's Airbnbs on Main Street, $300,000, $2 two-bedroom condos or townhouses are being bought up and they're being used for short-term rentals. So there's a place for that argument, but that argument didn't happen here. And we almost had a unanimous decision that short-term rentals don't affect low-income housing prices. So as far as I'm concerned, we got to a point where we almost unanimously agreed that the driver, or the reason that we were here, was invalid. So then we changed the argument. The argument became public safety and health, and we've had the codes enforcement officer here, who I feel like didn't do an adequate job to say that there's a big issue with short-term rentals. We had Mike Drake here. He stated that he would use the most importance that a registry would have is it would give him a way to contact the owner. He specifically left out anything that had to do with health and safety. And I've talked to the sheriff, and we had him here in front of us, and he clearly stated he didn't see any major issues with short-term rentals. So that argument isn't holding water either. And clearly the survey, if you take question 7 out of the survey, which is a very biased question, anybody with a wit would look at the survey and go, it's unanimous. It's a landslide that people view short-term rentals as a benefit, and there's very little in the way of health and safety that they're concerned with. So I think it's been a moving target, and I feel like when the argument doesn't work, we've switched it to other things.
Let me just, for the record, to say one thing. The purpose, the safety and welfare was part of the mandate. It was not affordability. The mandate that went to the select board, that it was approved by the select board.
I'm just quoting Bob. I'm just quoting what I got as an
yeah.
answer from Bob, and it's a direct quote.
Okay, but
Am I off base with what I'm saying today versus what I said then?
It's the same thing, but
Yeah.
my problem is that we were going to talk about unaddressed items. We've
Yes.
addressed this item. The question you just asked before was, how did we get here? Jane has responded to that. Now
It's
you're
different than
arguing-
what it was when
now
we
you're-
started,
Let me
though,
finish,
Howard.
Bruce. Let me finish. You're making an argument that the reasons that we're here aren't valid. And that's an appropriate argument to make as we move along in this process. But that's not an unaddressed item. That's been addressed, and it's been addressed over and over again. You just don't agree with it. And I respect that, but you know, it's not an unaddressed item.
Do you have a survey?
this is, yeah. So I think we have a thing that, can we accept
You got something I don't.
that we don't agree that on everything, that we may not,
Were they part of this?
sorry.
Sorry.
And how do we get to a place where we can move on rather than continuing to go back to what was not addressed fully as some individuals would like to have? I don't understand. I really seriously don't understand.
You're missing my point,
Oh,
and
I missed it
you
then.
don't need to do this for me. I'm just saying the answers we've got have changed. I'm concerned about the level of trust that we're getting from the community. And I think part of the reason that we're here is because the answers have changed. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. I would also remind us that we're in a process where I am learning, I think others are learning, as we have discussions, as questions come up, as issues get looked at and discussed. So to me, having an evolution of understanding, an evolution of answers is not a bad thing. That's part of the process. The question that came up in one of the earlier meetings, does short-term rentals affect affordability of housing? We have agreed that we do not believe that that's an issue, and it's not an issue that this task force is going to take.
It
That's
is
out of the
brought
scope.
up so many times in every meeting. When you
But-
go back and watch them.
But we
So
tried to,
let's
we're
just-
trying to put it, I'm just saying that's one bit where I think we've come to agreement as a task force, we don't need to address it again. Okay?
I think we've said that a lot of
Okay,
times.
all right. So, we've done the driving force. Who is affected was another question that's open. There's little understanding. Those are the two things I wrote down. That doesn't reflect what, whoever put that on the table. Who did that come from? The people who are affected, is that the question? Who are the people affected? This is what you asked, Bethany. Yeah.
Yeah, so the, I guess, I think we have defined it, but not necessarily in one small space, but like, what is, we have that definition of the short-term rental that is something that is rented for less than
30
days, right?
That's what we're working with.
And where there aren't regulations that are already established by the state are accommodations that people are in the business of renting out that are owned as individuals or less than 4 units, whether it be individual rooms or individual houses. And I think that the people that are here and coming and speaking with us here know what that those are the definitions. I think there's that was one of the earlier questions, is the general public was like, who's
being affected?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But the answer is right now is that nobody is, because nothing has been made.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, to reflect a little bit of what Bruce is saying, is that like, we don't have a policy. We're in the, this research of process. And coming up with an answer of what we're doing here and what we're producing before we have the information to know if anything is needed isn't an answer we can get.
Yeah. Okay.
It's,
Okay, so the task force is concerned with short-term rentals as defined by less than 50 days and less than 4 units. Do we agree on that? Is that, okay.
I'm sorry, the task force is what?
The scope of what we're looking at in terms of who's
defines it?
affected
Yep.
are owners of properties that are rented for less than 30 days and less than 4
Okay,
units.
I thought you said 50, okay.
Yeah.
No, 4.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, we're agreed on that, clarity on that. Anything else from the task force on open questions that we need to put on the agenda?
I was not able to attend that meeting yesterday on the survey, but did you say that Howard has a policy that he's working on that we're going to be, okay.
No, let's come back to the survey, and we'll talk about the agenda going forward
Okay.
at the end of the meeting and what the policy working group is doing. Okay, can we move on to the agenda then? And the survey will be discussed when we get to item number 8. Okay. Can we talk a little bit about what you brought in, Bethany?
That's not mine.
Oh, that's not yours. Whose is it?
That's mine.
Oh,
So,
sorry. You just handed it out. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe you could introduce, Bruce, for those who will be watching and those who are here, what task you took on and what we're receiving.
Well, so I've got, you had asked me to talk to the rental managers in town and discuss, you wanted to know what occupancy rates were, you wanted to know you'd like to have a general idea what the numbers were, and I think the average cost of a weekly rental. So
Can I just?
Yep.
Let me go back to the minutes, because I think that's more specific than I recall, that I asked you to do that. Let's see. Some members of the public made additional comments. No, that's not it. Sorry. Short discussion about legal counsel, this is at the number 10 on the minutes. We talked about the legal counsel. We agreed to further discuss how to take up open questions. I'm looking for the place in the minutes where we asked the property managers to get together and bring information to us.
Yeah, okay.
I listened
So,
to the meeting
I
today.
listened to the meeting, and I tried to just come with information
Okay.
as it was
It
asked for in the meeting.
It was
so-
very general.
Yeah, it was very general. This
Okay.
is super general.
Okay.
I think the issue was, we were responding to the fact that
Right.
the public comment was, and we were given a piece of a report about Airbnb being, the numbers that you get from AirDNA, I'm sorry, were
Not
wrong.
correct.
Very inaccurate.
They're very wrong.
Very
yeah.
inaccurate.
Yeah,
So
they're-
we
Right,
said
okay,
to the
yeah.
property manager, we said to Bruce, can you get the property managers together and come back to us with information about Harpswell, not Bangor or
That's right.
Brunswick or,
Right.
you know,
And
anywhere
information that
else.
you feel is valid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is what you got. It's not super specific, but I wish I had that AirDNA number. I don't have that in front of me.
Oh,
In this,
But it was,
is it on the,
You were particularly concerned about
Assessing the
audit.
It's on
nature of
the
impacts,
it's on the
there's a-
assessing.
yeah.
there's about 3/4 of the way down, there's a DNA.
Yeah, here it is.
Data.
Yeah, so specifically in this occupancy rate in January was
Right.
listed at 42%.
Right.
And so I reached out and had long conversations with 5 different vacation rental management companies. I didn't identify them here. I told everyone that I was going to ask them questions. If they didn't want to answer any of the questions, they didn't have to. And for the most part, everybody came forward with the answers. So on this first chart, the tall columns that you see, the dark blue columns, are the 5 vacation rental management companies. And their rate of occupancy in the month of July. So you can see that's actually pretty consistent with the AirDNA number.
Okay.
But you can also see that the off-season rents that AirDNA said was 42%. We had one vacation rental management company say it was 0. And we had a 5, a 10, a 20, and a 24%. And I'm confident that most of those are not short-term rentals. They're occupied, but they're occupied for some length of time. They're visiting nurses, visiting professors, visiting. So.
So they're simply occupancy rates.
Correct, yeah.
So they wouldn't be classified as short-term rentals.
Right, and, yeah. I mean, that's how they're booked. They're short-term rental properties that have occupancy in the off-season. So some of these are short-term. In fact, one of the vacation rental companies, they were, their off-season occupancy was short-term, all short-term. And then the others were a mixture. But it's clearly, those numbers that are stated here are not just wrong, they're wrong by probably 3 times. And I think that speaks to, there was a number here of like $90,000, I can't remember.
97, I think it was.
Yeah, that is
We also
a-
talked about,
Yeah, that's, as you can see, that would change it a lot, so.
yeah.
So I'm going to, I tried to get I reached out and asked everybody what their average rental week was in the summertime. And a lot of people were uncomfortable. So I'm gonna tell you what our agency is, and you can, I think it's relatively consistent, but our average.
Do we actually need this number?
Yeah, because I think it's.
I don't think it should be advertised.
All right, it doesn't, all right, so I'm not gonna give it to you. All
Well,
right.
wait a minute.
Sorry,
One of the things we were trying to gauge was,
I've got economic impact later, so why don't I just give you that and not deal with weekly vacation, the weekly rent.
well, give us a
rate.
ballpark, a range. I mean, it doesn't have to be specific. You're not talking about anybody, any individual. Air DNA gives us 376 ADR. That's average daily rate per day. What's the rate in Harpswell? I mean, that's what, one of the things everybody said was wrong. That Air DNA doesn't know anything.
Well, so they're
Okay.
saying 376 a day, but they're also saying it's 42% in January, so.
Right, well, but
The average
but I don't
daily
think
rate
anybody
might
was
be-
concerned about the January occupancy. I think they were concerned about how many people in the summer.
I would, so
And
I would,
what's the
so
average
I'll
daily
tell you
rate?
that, the Air DNA rate is roughly right, the average daily rate.
So that
It's
would
just
be
the
about
amount of days.
2,600 a week.
That's about right,
Okay.
for us.
In Harpswell.
And everyone else that's managing,
That's the peak, that's peak week
is that a
in the
good number?
summer.
Okay.
Hey, I did it. I'm the only, so I'm not, nobody else did it, so.
Too much, too low? But you think that's okay?
Well, what?
I think it doesn't matter.
Why does it even matter?
I think it doesn't matter.
think it matters.
That's what the market bears.
Yeah.
And I guess you would, the number of vacation rentals, if it's 300 vacation rentals, you take that number
Well,
and,
I think it does matter because we're now talking about a 2,600 a week average. We're clearly have debunked again the affordability issue. Because that's over, almost 10,000 a month. So again, now we have some data from Harpswell that says, we're not worried about affordability. We haven't been since we started this process. But the other thing is the economic impact. And we never have had any numbers other than the Air DNA numbers about economic impact, which is frankly the best argument to have STRs, is the economic impact in Harpswell, plus the fact that historically, we've been a vacation rental community. So I think it's
So
really
I-
important that we be able to quantify that for whatever report we're gonna ultimately do.
well, since you went there, I'm going to disagree with you that the most important reason to have short-term rentals is the economic impact, because 85% of the respondents in the survey stated they had no skin in the game. They didn't service vacation rentals, and 2/3 of the respondents didn't own a vacation rental.
We
And-
just got that,
Yeah,
the
but-
survey, so I can't
and-
respond to that, but
They're basically saying that, in the comment state, that it's part of the culture of the town. It's important for the town to have these visitors. There's a connection with these visitors.
Vital.
So this gets so this goes to this next chart, since
Well, I guess I
we
could
talked about it.
I could come
Economic
through here and
impact
read
is
all
great.
the comments,
Wait,
go the
wait,
other way.
guys, wait.
Economic impact is great, but I don't think it's the only reason to have them. This next chart was the amount of repeat renters that the vacation rental companies have. So I think this is an important number. It speaks to the connection between these summer renters, summer guests, and their connection to the town. The lowest rate of repeat renters of the 5 was 40%, and the highest rate was 80%. So a significant amount of these folks are coming back year after year after year. And some of the comments I got, one of the vacation rental managers says he has a property that 5 generations of one family have been in that rental. So, I've heard some comments, corporations are coming here and buying up property, and the owners of these properties have no connection to the town, and it's just not true. And it's just not true. If there were a company, a profit-making corporation that wanted to do vacation rentals or do Airbnbs, this is like the last place you'd want to do it. You can look at what's out there in inventory for real estate for sale right now, and you can pick any property out there, and none of them are going to come anywhere near generating positive cash flow. So it's just not, the money that's generated here is to help families hold on to generational properties for the most part. I didn't include this in the oh, yes, I did. I asked every single property manager that I spoke to, and this represents over 160 properties here in town, if they had owners who owned multiple properties. And 3.7% of the owners that we represented in our management companies, 3.7% had multiple properties. And none of them were corporately owned. So none of the people that had multiple properties were corporate. They were individuals. And I heard most of, we have 2. One of those multiple property owners volunteers a ton of time and money to local nonprofits. The other one lives here year-round, lives in the town of Brunswick year-round. They're retired. None of these people are on the 7th floor of a Dallas high-rise waiting for the checks to roll in. So, that depiction of these property owners has come up 3 or 4 times in these meetings, and nothing could be farther from the truth. I can't find an example of that anywhere. So the point I'm trying to make here, and what this chart does, is there's a strong connection here between these people that are coming to town and the community, and I'm hearing it on the phone, but I'm seeing it in these comments. They're scared to death of what you're going to do. What our task force is going to do.
They being the property managers?
Guests?
Or the owners?
Well, I can tell you the property managers are.
Homeowners.
But the guests are, and the homeowners are.
Okay.
Every single property manager I spoke to said they spoke to the guests before they come here. Every single one. And I can tell you what our conversations are like. This is a 2-bedroom house on a septic. It's not public water, it's not public sewer, short showers, spread out your water use. The water comes from a well. You need to be careful with your water use and conservative. We encourage everybody to import their own drinking water. But the point is, we're not again, I'll go back to the guy in the Dallas high-rise. He's not, that person is not giving somebody a key code so that they can come to Harpswell and, you know, there's no connection, there's no discussion, there's no communication. That's happening with every single one of the property management companies I talk to.
Bruce, could I ask you a question on
Yeah.
this? So thank you for that, asking the property manager throughout town. And I'm sure it's not all-inclusive. But can I get a reality if I'm off base in saying this? If I add up these 5, we're at 442 short-term rentals. And if you multiply.
No, those are, that's
no,
percent,
that's
that's percent.
percent of
that's
occupancy.
percent,
So,
that's
so
percent.
then, okay, help me out then. So what I was after, if that percent, do we have a number related to how many there are?
He just said
Then-
At
160.
around 160.
There's 162
60.
properties.
So if we multiply that number, because supposedly 30% of it's being done by property management, we're getting at that 400 unit approximately for the town of Harpswell?
Well, I did ask.
Is that a fair question?
Well, that's if you assume it's 30%. I asked, again, and I didn't include it in the survey, I asked every single property manager if they felt like 450 was the appropriate number for rental properties in town. They all said that was too high a number. In the very first meeting, I said that the property managers managed roughly 150, the ones that I knew of. And I assumed it was about a third, and then I said, well, so let's use your number, it gets to the 450 that was brought up somewhere, somebody suggested there might be 450.
That was data from AirD.
Yeah, 'cause
So
the-
I can tell you that, the professionals in town that do this were much lower than what I sort of allowed that to, when I said 450. It could be 450, we don't know.
Well, I'm asking only because I think some of MCOG, Mid-Coast Council of Governors, has indicated that a saturation above 9% could be detrimental to a town. And if we're under that number, that's great news. I don't know where we're at, honestly, but I think we've represented that we're at 4%. So we're actually, this is relevant information.
well,
Let me
the
just-
MCOG
let me-
study also said we were lower than the 450.
Okay.
It was somewhere in the
we had-
260 area.
And we had 2 data points, the MCOG one, which said that in the 4% in wintertime and 7% in a peak season, from Airbnb data. The Air DNA had the higher number, that's all in that assessment document. So we've got in that place 2 data points. But the question, I think, on the table that I'm putting out as open issues, how many STRs are there in
So
Harpswell?
I think the best answer you're going to get is, it depends. So, if somebody is if somebody's trying to rent, I have a place that I go to ski. I try to get 2 weeks and 2 weekends a year rental out of it. Is that a short-term rental property, or is that not a short-term rental property? If it's a short-term rental property and you're trying to figure out how does that affect? In other words, if you count that as one, and you're using the average short-term rental property is collecting $90,000, numbers are gonna be off. So, we're trying to make it linear, it's not, some people are trying to get 2 weeks out of their property. Other people are trying to get 365 days out of it. So it's, I don't see how we're gonna get any answer, what's that?
Subjective to each owner.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
On their property.
Okay, and then the last thing, there's a couple observations I wanted to, there's a connection between our commercial fisheries and our short-term rental properties and our short-term guests. And I asked I spoke to probably 10 or 15, let's say a dozen people who work in short-term rentals, either the managers, the owners of both of these companies. I asked every one of them if they had been to a local restaurant and ordered a lobster dinner or shore dinner. And so you might ask, what difference does that make? None of them, without hesitation, everybody said, no, not one. I asked them all if they'd eaten lobster this year, and one of them ate more lobster than the indentured servants who used to get it 6 times a week.
Prisons.
So where I'm going with this is these local restaurants sell tons of lobster dinners, but the locals aren't buying lobster at the restaurant. We can get it from the buddy or the neighbor. They're selling these lobster dinners, and they're supporting these restaurants, and they're keeping these businesses going, and they're vital here. We keep saying, Bob, you just came up with 9% is, if it's more than 9%, it's unhealthy. Howard, you've talked about different communities who have different restrictions. And I've made this point a couple of times. Mark came from Stowe, Vermont, and Stowe, Vermont is a resort town, but Stowe, Vermont, the vacation rental business in Stowe, Vermont that town's a ghost town without vacation rentals. And Sugarloaf is, and Harpswell, I saw some comments, people don't want to call it a resort town, so let's not call it a resort town, but the level of economic impact that the hospitality business has in Harpswell is it's multiple times greater than what it affects Freeport, which somebody's thought that was a great idea, or Rockland, or Camden, or Portland, or Bar Harbor. It's a significant part of our economy. So shutting it down, restricting it, diminishing what we're doing with it has a much bigger impact than any of the communities that you're going to bring up and say, this is what they do, this is what they do, this is what they do. So the lobster analogy was my way of showing how important they are, not just to the homeowners, but to the commercial fishermen who sell their product here in town. 100%, this, again, without hesitation, 100% of the vacation rental managers require a lobster pot to be in every single property we have. Now, that's there for a reason. We're trying to get, we want to make it easy and convenient for these guests to support our fishery. Tim Clark got up, and so I think a lot of this has been pivotal on what Tim had to say about the impact of short-term rentals. And when he asked, okay, we asked him to get back up and explain, what he felt like was the real impact of short-term rentals. And he gave us the ketchup bottle analogy of people buy more ketchup bottles. And that stuck with me, so I asked every single property manager what they did with the trash. So his argument was that they produce more trash. And 92.5% of the properties that are managed by management companies in this town, so almost all of them, the trash gets put in a dumpster. And a commercial trash company picks that trash up, drives over the town line through Brunswick, and takes it to Bath. So the argument that we're stressing out the recycling center, that's a non-argument. I mean, if we took the vacation rentals away and we used those houses as full-time properties, there's gonna be more impact So, so the closest thing I'm gonna get to Howard for economic impact was I took our percentage, this is our company's percentage of the properties that are represented here by the
Okay.
managers that I interviewed, and I multiplied it. So I didn't want to ask everybody what their numbers were to vendors. So if you take our percentage and you carry it through the other property managers, these are the numbers I come up with. Am I making myself clear, or is this
Yeah.
confusing? Okay.
This is number 4.
This is number 4. So $750,000 of just these property managers, $750,000 went to local vendors.
Excuse me, can you define local vendors?
So these are electricians. I mean, we put a furnace in one of our rentals yesterday. So these are heating and plumbing and carpenters, roofers. Handyman, these are people that pull the docks and check the moorings. These are cleaners,
Mowers.
mowers, I mean, you name it. So if you also use the assumption that we represent a third of the total rental properties, and you multiply that by 3, we're at $2.3 million of gross income that we're spreading around to local vendors. And of those 5 little Harpswell vacation rental managers, we sent $500,000 to the state coffers in lodging tax. So again, multiply that by 3, if that's what we're going to use, it's $1.5 million in the state coffers from lodging tax. Lodging tax, while we're on the topic of lodging tax, one of the concerns that I have is that this started out as a list. I mean, it was described to me as maybe we want a list of what the vacation rental properties are. And then it became a registry. And as soon as we talked about a registry, we associated it with there was a fee associated with the registry, which to me is a license. And in the license, we talked about maybe some restrictions or some criteria. So I'm going to tell you the story of the lodging tax. So lodging tax was 5%. It mirrored state sales tax, and it was that way forever until about 2009. And someone from the state thought it'd be a great idea to charge out-of-staters, raise their tax, so the burden would be less on non-Mainers, which I'm in agreement with, so that went to 6%. So, there was some pushback from the vacation rental business about 6%, and then it went to 7%, and then 8%, and 9%, and now they're asking for 10%. So when I hear a fee, it's like the mooring fee. We had a $0 mooring fee 20 years ago. Then it was 12. Now it's, I don't know what the mooring fee is now, but
50.
if we get to a point where we're charging a fee, one of the biggest concerns that everybody's got is that fee just is going to go from 0 to 100, and we have no way to control it. So the last point I want to make: 90% of the properties that these vacation rental managers managed were used by the property owners themselves. So again, I'm closing the loop here. There's a connection with these property owners to the community as well. So it's not just the guests, it's the property owners that have a connection to the town as well. So it's a general report. I hope it's helpful, but that's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Howard, you have some
Just a quick
comment?
question. The $500,000 tax figure, where does that come from? Do you guys collect the taxes, or does Airbnb or VRBO?
The property managers collect the tax, and we send the money and a report to the
Every month.
state every month.
So that's 500 just from you, the 5
That's just from the 5
at 9%.
at 9%.
Okay.
I'll clarify for Airbnb, they send the tax?
Yeah, Airbnb and VRO collect the taxes. It doesn't come through you guys. If
It
you have
depends if they book
Airbnb.
direct or if they go through Airbnb, but yeah,
This is just the ones that you guys rent.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bruce, thank you very much. This is very, very good information, and we'll put it into the record, and it does respond to the concerns that were expressed when we used the earlier data. So let me just say a word while we're talking about this as a complement to that assessment. What you got in the packet was the assessment without, the assessment exists with tracked comments on it, the comments that we had at that last meeting. What you got, those tracked comments were lost, so we'll get that to you again in its proper form in the package you got. Is that clear? So disregard that piece of paper. No, not the survey, Howard. I'm talking about the assessment that we discussed last meeting, the assessment document.
Okay.
So since we're on this topic, I want to be clear about that. You will get the proper document via email, so you can see nothing was changed in the content but the comments that we discussed. This responsive, so this will go with that assessment stuff and be part of what we work with going forward.
Okay, great.
And very much appreciate it. All right. As I said, we have a full meeting. Let's move to number 7 is simply a question. We agreed last meeting that we would put education into our mission statement. We don't have a mechanism now for exploring what we mean by that or how we put that into our work. So let me ask, we don't try to discuss that tonight, but please think for our next meeting. What do we mean by education? What do we want to do with it? How do we structure work around that so we can move forward on that new part of our agenda?
I'm sorry if I think we put education in there because if it wasn't a regulation, it was an education process. So I don't know that we're going down.
But we have to, if we're going to make a recommendation to the select board about we want an education process,
Yeah.
we need to describe what that would look like. So we need to have some substance behind it, so that the select board can look at it and.
Isn't that the policy group's responsibility to, in
Deal
this
with
board, to
education?
come up with whether we're going to go down an educational basis? I mean,
That's what
for all
I'm
of
saying.
us.
How do we fit it into our work plan? How do we address that part of what is now our mandate? So let's take that up at the next meeting, please, because we're not going to have time to discuss it now. And I want people to be able to give some thought to that. Okay? So we'll move on to number 8, which is the report from the working group that is dealing with the survey, the Public Engagement Working Group. And I want to make a couple of comments of introduction, and Mark is going to walk us through the quantitative part of the report that we've received. So for the publics, whoever's watching this later, or whoever's here and hasn't been aware of how we did this, we created a survey. It went out just before the end of the year. It went out by postcard to non-resident members of the community, and went via the Anchor to everyone who lives in Harpswell and gets the Anchor, or lives anywhere and gets the Anchor. We had 678 in total responses to that survey, which is about 14% of the total population, which is high for a survey, as I've been led to believe by the experience of this town. If we get 10% or more, we think that's a good number. There was a comment section which was a little over half of the respondents made comments as well. And everyone in the task force has the full report of the comments, which we will be working with in the subgroup, in the working group. We're presenting the quantitative data now because it's available in its entirety. The comment section, the working group was going to meet last week, was not able to because of the weather. We met just last night and are working on a process of reviewing the comments, developing out of that a sense of what are the themes that we need to be thinking about, what is the public saying to us, and we'll continue to work on that and bring a first cut at what we've learned to the March meeting, March 11th, I believe it's going to be, if we can stick with the second Tuesday. So we don't have anything to report on the comments tonight. That's what I'm saying. That's a work in progress. And I want to apologize. We wanted to have the charts available on that screen so that everyone who sees the video after this meeting will have access to them. For technical reasons, we weren't able to do that. So this will be on the website as of tomorrow morning. So anyone who watches the video, you can go to the website to see what's being described by Mark. Okay, so that's just the introduction and the background. Mark, are you ready?
Question number 1. Have you ever stayed in a short-term rental property? 671 responses. 81.1% of people said yes. 18.9% said no. Question number 2.
Oh, yeah. I think what our plan was, just, excuse me for interrupting, Mark, for you to go through, for people to listen, to look at what you have in front of you, and then we'll have discussion after he's gone through the whole thing, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Question number 2, do you own a short-term rental property? 669 responses. 34.5% said yes. 65.5% said no. Question number 3, do you provide services to short-term rental properties? 667 responses. 15.3% said yes. 84.7% of people said no. Question number 4, how much do you agree that the Harpswell community benefits in the following ways? Please choose the letter that best reflects your opinion. So reading from left to right for the answers, A, disagree, B, slightly disagree, C, neither disagree or agree, D, slightly agree, and E, agree. The first view says income to homeowner is important. Greater than 400 responses agree that that is true, and then slightly agree was second, neither disagree or agree was third, slightly disagree was, disagree was fourth, and then slightly disagree was next. Same question, income to investors is important. Over 200 responses agreed, and then the other were broken down to disagree between 100 and 200, and then the neither disagree or agree probably was second, a little bit less than the disagree, and then the other two were under 100. Jobs at service, STRs, are important. Overwhelmingly agree, over 400 responses. Slightly agree was over 100 responses, and the other three were less than 100. Income to other businesses in town is important. Strongly agree, and slightly agree was D, was just a little bit under 100, and then the other three responses were less than that. Enhancing Harpswell's reputation as a vacation destination is important. Agree, greater than 300 responses agreed. Slightly agree was about a little over 100. Neither in the middle, C was kind of at 100, and then the other two are under 100. Question number 5, are there STR properties in your neighborhood? 671 responses, 82.3% of the people said yes. No, well, don't know was 11.2%, and the difference were no. Question number 6, how much do you agree the following issues are true in your neighborhood with respect to SDRs? Please choose the letter that best reflects your opinion. Noise was disagree strongly. That was over 300 responses. All the other responses were basically under 100. Fireworks, disagree, was greater than 300, and everything else was under 100. Lighting was the highest. Disagree. Agree was over 100, and everything else was less than 100. Parking, disagree was the strongest, 300. Everything else was under 100. Trash was over 300. Disagree. The kind of the C, the neither agree or disagree, was over 100. Everything else was less than 100. The use of shared community amenities, disagree, was just under 300. The neutral portion of the C was over 100. Everything else was less than 100. And the use of private amenities, including docks, right-of-ways, disagree, was just a hair under 300 responses, and everything else was under 100 except for the C, the neutral position, was a little over 100. Question number 7, should the town have a policy regarding STRs for the purpose of assuring consumer and community safety and welfare? 675 responses, yes. 46.7 said yes. No, 37.3%, and don't know was 16%. Question number 8, I am a, there were 663 responses, resident 50.5%, non-resident 49.5%. And the last one, question number 9, my residency or property is located off 658 responses. 37.1 was Harpswell Neck Road. 18.5% was, I believe, Harpswell Islands Road, Bailey Island. 14.7 Harpswell Islands Road, Orrs Island. 13.5% was Harpswell Islands Road, Great Island. 10.3 was Cundy's Harbor Road, and the two small slices of the pie were coastal islands, which would have been the difference.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me then ask if anyone on the working group that's been working on the survey wants to make a comment or observation, and then we'll go to the rest of the task force. That would be Sherry, Jennifer, and or Nellie, if you want to say anything about this part of the survey.
I think I found the most helpful comments being in question number 4 and question number 6. To just,
4 and 6.
Yep, to see what the community's opinions are for the owners of short-term renters. Just, we don't know. So that was a helpful tool. But especially number 6, it tells me that overall, all of the areas that we hearsay about being problems, according to this, if we were only using this tool, say they're not a problem. So I really think that that was a useful tool in our collection of information and data to reflect on the problems with short-term rentals.
Could I just ask you a question? Would it be fair, do you think, given that there are some people in the purple and the green category, to say it's a problem for a smaller number of for a smaller number of
Yeah.
people, as opposed to not a problem. We don't
Right.
want to discount people who tell us it is a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, it is not, which is what we've been hearing here from
Yeah.
the public and from members of the task force.
Mhm.
So it confirms. Okay?
I agree with that. I still have my issues with question number 7. The way it was worded, the responses we got from it. I think it's great to have safety. Everything, every home in Harpswell should be safe. We have not discussed either how credible this survey, how we're going to use this moving forward with the way some of these questions were worded. It's been brought up, public comment. We've mentioned it in here. There's a lot of comments in the comments about the survey as well. I think it's fair to recognize the wording.
Okay, so that's the question about the credibility of number 7.
Yeah.
Okay? And Sherry's quite right. In the comments, there are a number of comments about the survey, about the task force itself, and that's going to shed more. What we talked about last night is the comments are going to give some reality to what this does or doesn't show us
And it
in terms
also
of concrete experience that people have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It also stands behind what Bruce said about people trusting us as a task force. There's comments about that in there as well, so.
All kinds of comments. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Mark.
Also on question 7, the confusing part for me was I would think that everybody in the community would want consumer safety and community welfare. So I think the problem with the question is, I think 46% said yes, but 37.3, I can't believe, would not want that. I think it comes down to that they don't want to have a policy regarding short-term rentals. So I think that's why they answered that, because it should be 100% want it. I think it's the creating a policy for that is the problem. Maybe we should have asked the question, should the town have a policy regarding short-term rentals, period, and then get people's intake
mind
from
the
that
purpose. Yeah.
versus saying safety, and because everybody wants safety and community for everybody. So not just because we don't have a policy, we still want people to be safe.
Okay. So another reason to be concerned about the meaning of this result. Okay.
Jane,
Yes.
we're going to have some community interaction as well at pop-ups or discussions?
Yes.
So
The
is
plan
it
is in the
relevant
summer.
that that committee view this and take some takeaways from this that we can use at that meeting? I mean, if there's questions revolving around question 7, then let's make sure we have those for that future conversation.
And ask the question the right way next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an opportunity to correct if it's a wrong.
Yeah, very much. Any of the data that we have, any of the
Okay.
information we put I shouldn't say any, all of the information that we put forward when what we think we have learned that we want to feed back to the community, yes, that's a community response and verification or not verification of the reality and the truth as they see it. Is that the point you're making?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just saying,
Yeah.
the committee's gotten, I mean, the review of this is now worth its time and effort to move forward with.
Yeah,
So-
okay. It is what, sorry, this is trite, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's what people have told us, however they interpreted the questions as they did it, it's what they've told us. And I think that the fact that we have in the bar graphs very clear, as you said in the beginning, Jennifer, very clear information from the community itself, not from those of us sitting in this room, how they view the value of the folks who come in the summer, who stay in our properties in Harpswell, and what they see is the lack or existence of problems for them. So I think that's very important. All right, anything else from the task force about, you want to comment on what we see here in the quantitative side?
From the task force, not the working group.
Right, from the task force,
Okay,
yeah. I just gave them a chance since they've put the work into it.
All right, so I do have something to say about the survey, and I apologize because I've had the mic a fair amount tonight, but Jane, your comment about you asked Jennifer, would it be fair to say that a small amount of people do have a problem with short-term rentals based on the survey? And I think that observation, you can make that observation, but we had 671 people answer the survey, and you can make that argument that if 4 people had a problem with big STRs, that, that argument still holds up with 4 people. These numbers, there's no numbers here, but near as I can tell, I mean, it's a landslide. It's better than I thought it was gonna be. I mean, there's 80%, every single question, 80%, we either had to agree or disagree that it's a benefit to the community. And if you're using the disagree and slightly disagree numbers, in most cases, except for, which I thought was interesting, income to investors is important.
Yep.
We keep throwing out these investors that are rushing to Harpswell to make their fortune, and it's not happening. They are the guy in the Dallas high-rise is easy to dislike, but he doesn't exist. So this is why I'm concerned about how much weight we put in this. I think question 7, I'm scared about question 7 because I think unless you focus on question 7, we have nothing to talk about here. I mean, it appears to me that for the most part, except for a minor amount of people, and you can get, in 670 people, you can get a handful of them to disagree on anything. So question 7 was an extremely biased question. It's like, would you jump out of a moving automobile? The question, the answer to that question is obvious. As Mark pointed out, the fact that enough people sort of saw through the question, and because I think it was a question that was, I feel like the question was put there purposely because it's a biased question. Everybody that I spoke to about this question said they're looking for an answer, and we still didn't even get it. Even with such a loaded question, we still didn't get 100. We still didn't get 50% of the people to answer the question that consumer safety is a good idea. So I'm concerned that we're going to focus on this when it comes right down to it. If anybody looks at the survey and says, is the town looking for short-term rental regulations, the answer is obvious. I think.
So,
That's my opinion.
That's great. I just want to comment that the working group, looking at the comments, there are many comments about regulation, for and against. So Mark, I think, made a good point, because there's a policy in here. It's asking 2 questions in one, and we don't know what people are answering, whether they're answering about policy or whether they're answering about safety and welfare. So
if that
makes that what we see on this chart not easy to interpret, not easy to.
The comments are going to tell us.
I think that's
we ought
it,
to
yeah.
defer any
Yeah.
further discussion about the survey until we categorize the comments, and people have had, I just got it before I came, right
Sure.
when we got here.
Sure.
I don't think anybody's had a chance to do that. I would assume, like all surveys, everybody's going to read it differently, and there will be things that will support one position and clearly support others.
I'm glad you brought that up, Howard. So you have there's a key on the comments
Right,
that we got.
right.
And number 3 on the short-term rental regulations, pro and con, that's 3 on the key. Can you explain to me what that means?
I don't have a key.
You don't have a key in that. What you have is just
The survey.
The survey.
Comment. So we
And the-
can't talk about something we don't even have.
Oh, you can't. This is for you all just to have the full set of comments. We're not asking you to do anything with it, other than if you want to peruse it and see what's there. The working group is working on sorting them out into that set of the keys, and drawing themes from that, but they're very
we'll wait
early
until
stages.
you get that process
Yes,
done.
we're going to bring the first 3 to our meeting in March, which are, I don't have it in front of me, so the first 3 questions, which are
The STR Impact Pro, STR
impact
Impact
con regulation.
And STR,
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
so those are
That's what you guys
in
are
the
working on.
process of the working group, looking at, reviewing, categorizing, and will be brought to the task force, both in where they are, what they are, and what the themes are that come out of them. So you'll get a printout with 1, 2, 3, each one marked, and then the themes that the working group sees in that for discussion and acceptance and whatever.
And it
Yeah.
is interpreting them isn't
Yeah,
easy.
I'm just going to, under the key, under short-term rental regulations, pro and con, that seems to me like somebody who maybe is torn.
Well,
And
some-
I'm just going to take 2, and just, this is a comment. This is another way for the town to make money from its property owners that rent. And that was classified as, they're both pro and con about short-term rental regulations. And then one just below that, I'm not searching for these, the one just below that, short-term rentals are a vital part of this community, and I would prefer they be allowed. Again, that got key 3, short-term,
I-
pro and con.
I don't have any of this
We don't have any
information,
of
So
this.
let's-
and I don't think it's relevant until the whole group has it.
And I think we,
Well, the work group worked on this, so
Well,
I'm
we're-
just,
And the work group
It's a-
presents.
it's a work in progress.
Okay,
We're still
fair enough.
filtering through things
Fair
and
enough.
trying to identify and best extract. Because from my perspective, this is a black and white answer to only the questions we asked. But all the responses from the survey really give us context to why they answered that way. So I think we need to do more work to give.
fair enough, fair
To-
enough. All right, I'll let it go.
It's going to be a lot of work.
Is
You're
it-
welcome to help.
Yes, please come help
You should come
anytime.
to the next one.
I wish I could have made last night, but I'll try to make the next one. Thank you.
okay, shall we move on? We're done? Okay. Other business I'm going to forego because we are now at 6:45, and we can bring in the comments from the webinar at another time. I've already addressed the assessment question. Let me just review. Our next meeting is going to be the Policy Working Group on February 6th here in the office. The next task force meeting is going to be February 13th, 5 to 7, and that will be an opportunity for the policy group to report back. I am working to schedule this meeting every second Tuesday, going from now through the year, but negotiating with another committee whose time we preempted and seeing if we can work that out. So I hope that we'll have that by our next meeting, knowing what our regular scheduled meeting is going to be going forward.
Is the February 6th meeting here in like the rooms that we were meeting in?
Probably somewhere here, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, we have limited time, and we have two parts of public input, comment. Let me find the page. I will briefly provide the overview that we had.
We need to save time for anything.
I know,
public.
I know. So let me just do it very brief. We had 12 letters from 11 people. I'm not going to go bit by bit and read all of that. I'll leave that to the task force to read. I can't off the top of my head summarize them into very short sentences because some were quite long. A non-resident owner is concerned about the non-property managed properties. What about those? Supports the reality that property managers assure that places are safe and codes are met and so on and so forth. So it's a question of what about this 70 or whatever percent it is, what do we do? That's a question, an open question that came from public comment as well. How do we reach the 70% of owners that are not managed professionally? Also, ask why now, the question that's been asked here, and how would a code be enforced? The second comment is that short-term renters bring diversity and new ideas and needed income to our town. Do not inhibit the process. The third one is a comment from a person who purchased rental property next door, and they require the income to support the mortgage and do not want to see any ban on short-term rental. The next one, owner of professionally managed STR, talks about how they use it as a family, and the fact that this is I presume a seasonal property, it is less of a burden on the town for a fully paying fully property taxpayer. That was mentioned in another one later on. There were 4 emails from a family who inherited the property, and they talk about how they manage it and respect the community, look for feedback. They do not want, quote, bad STR owners on Orr's Island, so don't lump us all together. Instead, have guidelines and feedback complaint process. The next one, understand of talk of taxing rental properties, and listening to you, fee equals tax for some people. And this one says, what would the guests, vacationers feel if they were a name tax? The next one, the Orr's resident with a small cottage, which is rented for 13 weeks a year, that's the longer term, benefits businesses, et cetera. If they were prohibited, here's another concern out there, obviously, would consider subdividing and selling the cottage to a full-time resident who would use more town services. So, next one, STR benefits businesses. Seasonal property is rented 12 to 14 weeks. The family uses it 6 to 8 weeks. Not renting would have a negative impact on us and local business. There was one with a date missing that suggests evaluating the town relative to similar ones in Maine and nationwide, with a high percentage of second homes, and then refers to what happened in Palm Springs in terms of a crash of a housing market, which you can look at if you want to, because that individual included links to that. And he also talks about addressing affordable housing with large apartments like Brunswick, so linking the two together, which we have, as a task force, said we're not going there. That's not something that we believe is relevant. All right. For public comment, let me repeat what I said early on. I would invite people who may be here and have not commented before. Excuse me, Heather.
Hi. Can I have the microphone?
Heather, can I?
Go ahead and finish. I'll wait.
I would like.
I'm not speaking, if that's what you're saying.
You may speak. You may speak, please.
So I
No,
actually,
May I ask you to defer for a moment? Is there anyone here who has not spoken before who would like to speak so that we can hear from every voice? Yes, sir. Heather, would you please defer your
sure.
comment for someone
So are
else?
you saying you're not gonna let some of us speak?
I'm going to say we're going to stop.
just go ahead so we
Okay,
don't, so that we have time.
I'll be brief.
15 minutes, be brief.
No.
Be brief.
I'll be brief.
Allison, just let him.
Okay, I don't know a lot of folks here.
No, I'm not.
Could you
I've
give
known
us
your
your,
mom and dad for about 40 years,
could you give us
Don
your,
and Sharon.
sir,
I'm from Hawaii.
could you give us your name, please?
Could I what?
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm David Yancey.
Okay.
I own the house at 1786 Harpswell Neck Road. And I might have a different perspective because I also own a house in the Auburn Colony, which is a short-term rental. But it's only for 3 months out of the year. We definitely use a dumpster. I have a great property manager. All my rentals are repeat rentals. If it's not 100%, every now and then we get somebody new in there, but most of these folks have been renting for 10 and 15 years for me. And then I pay taxes on a property on Ash Point, 177 Ash Point. My cousin lives on American Eagle Road, Sheriff. Some of y'all might know Sheriff. So I feel like I don't understand the reason for you all doing this. It just seems to me that it's just going to cause more property taxes for everybody in Harpswell, another layer of bureaucracy that I don't feel like the little town needs. So I don't think it's broken. And I wish y'all would quit trying to fix it.
Thank you very
That's me.
much.
Thank you.
Anyone else who has not spoken before? Sir? Yes.
All right. Hello.
Your
Just
name,
a
please?
citizen.
Your name, please?
Just a citizen. A resident of Harpswell, citizen, anonymous.
You're anonymous.
Yeah. So I think we have a big opportunity here to flip this into a win. I don't think we are seeing that right now. Let me just run through my little schematic here. So we have a problem, and I think it's a minimal issue, but I'm seeing a bigger problem, and it's about privacy and data. And the way I see it, that's something that we should defend. And the solution that I'm seeing is that we could have the Harpswell STR support community instead of a task force. So this could be a private group on Facebook, and it could have a moderator from town, and it could have things like experience and destination suggestions, good times for all, guidelines, safety, fire safety suggestions, reminders and seminars, legal suggestions, management services, cleaning services, insurance resources, recycling education. Boom, let's do that. Best practices on, and getting the right thing in the right hole. It's like THX 1138, let's go. Okay, let's see. And we can also have maybe, I've heard some of the hosts have had bad guests. Maybe we have a list, so we don't have those kind of people in and around the area. Private list on Facebook. Maybe special events for our guests in the Harpswell lifestyle. How to make your own STR. How about that? Get our entrepreneurs going. And then, look at all the time we put into this. That's a fraction of a human life. And, could we do better? Can we make a task force with all that time on something like the brown-tailed moth? And I guess that's what I got here on my piece of paper. So.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Allen, Your Island Connection. I live in Cundies Harbor. I had a nice little thing I was just going to add some data to, but I'd like to just start by saying I'm incredibly offended that I've been told not to speak up here. That I wasn't allowed to speak first. The reason I speak at every single meeting is because I've asked the same questions at every single meeting, and there is not, what's the word used, deliberation. My emails are purposely left out until I actually had to call you on it last time. So that was my frustration about running up here. I speak at the State House on a regular basis, and I've never been treated with such disrespect. Moving on to my original comments. The lawyer question, just as an FYI, was asked by public comment at the very first meeting. It seemed like Bruce was getting pushed for that. He pushed for the answers at the last meeting, but it was asked every time at public comment, not by me, but by another speaker. A couple other points. The property manager data document that Bruce shared, I think that it includes owner occupancy in it.
Yes.
You don't need to answer that. I'm not asking for deliberation, just maybe next time. I'd like you to consider the $2,600 a week is really only for 2 months of the year. Those weeks, if owners are using that time, they don't get $2,600, obviously. So for 2 months a year, so if you're trying to use those numbers, you really need to think about shoulder seasons are less, and most of my properties close for the winter. So take that $2,600 with a grain of salt. The Maine tourism report just came out that the average traveler spends about $422 a day in Maine at grocery stores, restaurants, shops, and attractions in the local area that they are staying. I've sent that report a few times to our select person, but I'm not sure if it's been shared. And lastly, the lodging tax bill that is currently, I just thought you guys might want this information, in the State House is that 9% is collected. Right now, there is a bill that 2% may go back to the local municipalities where it is rented. I do not know if that will pass, and I don't know if it's pertinent to your discussion, but I thought you might want that information. There was one question about education, and I think I brought this up one other time. There's a working waterfront scuttlebutt kind of thing, and I would just encourage you, if you haven't looked at this and you decide to go the route of education, to look at what this offers. This is really about working waterfront, but something like that setup would be what I would envision for the town of Harpswell for short-term rentals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Woods, property manager. I'm not going to have any questions because I've never been given any answers, so I'm just going to have a couple comments at this point. Let's see. I respect not every question can be answered, but the major ones can, such as what is the catalyst? 6 weeks in and a survey came out, and still no one could provide a cause as to the task force. That's pretty blatant, easy, black and white. You can provide an answer. Let's see. It feels as though someone on this task force has made it personal because they had a problem with a rental. Example, Bob being the septic coming into your property. Noise, fireworks, trash, wear and tear on the roads are all done more by owners than they are renters. Fireworks are never permitted on any of my properties. I've spoken with fishermen who are now at times financially dependent on tourism. Fishermen were regulated and it made their job difficult. We all saw how that happened. I would be weary of then tapping into a fisherman's income. That is a Pandora's box you do not want to open. 2 comments I have. One I think I will lead with is board members should not speak to the public in the parking lot about matters that should be done in the meeting with all parties present. Even when I told Bob, do not discuss task force matters outside of the meeting, you continued to speak to me and I had to walk away to fully disengage from you. What was offensive? Limit conversation here, but yet you can talk to me outside in the parking lot. It should all be present among all parties with cameras. It's inappropriate. And on the heels of what Jennifer asked, to give respect because you volunteered for a board, respect is only ever earned. It is never given. And honestly, a lot of board members have not earned it here, to the distress of what all this has transpired, and to limit public conversation and comment, absolutely asinine. Thank you.
All right. We're at 7 o'clock, and I am going to close the meeting. I am going to adjourn the meeting. With respect to the fact that we have volunteers here, our meeting is 5 to 7. I want to say that we have had a discussion. There are comments that we're receiving that
Jane, how can you close the meeting and keep speaking? Let me speak. I got one comment I'll make, and we can move on. That is totally disrespectful. You've been blathering on forever. You
Yeah.
just read emails that you could have put in a packet.
Absolutely.
They are. in the
That is our
packet,
right.
actually.
You gotta
To be
listen
able to
us.
come, who are you serving? You serve us. You serve us.
Thank you, Allison.
You took
The
7
meeting
minutes
is
of our
closed.
speaking
Yes, and this
time.
is why people don't trust you. We are here, I sat here for 2 hours and listened to this friggin' nonsense, so I can't even bring up one good point for here.
Everyone in this room and everyone in the community has the opportunity to send written
Oh, so
comments
you
in.
send it to codes and nobody hears it, so we gotta go to the codes office.
Don't answer it.
The
You
meeting is
better ask your
closed.
legal about shutting down the public and our right to speak at public meetings too then.
Thank you.
What's your comment?
I'll listen to
Well, I mean, if you're gonna sit here then, I mean.
wanna hear it.
I had a lot of other things to say, but I'll just get right to the point. We just had 2 major storms in this town that have completely devastated us. None of you have talked about it. It has completely devastated the commercial industry and all the people that you're talking about doing rentals. So you know what I would suggest? I would suggest until our representatives, Senator Collins, who was just here taking a tour of this town, of our devastation, we actually get an economic report of what is happening to us. And you should stop doing this because the economic impact is going to be astronomical to a community that relies on this. Enough is enough.
All right.
Here,
The meeting is closed.